I'm Pastor Chavaleh, and it's my absolute joy to welcome you to Mount Cross this morning virtually. Today, I have some more thoughts on worship and the ways that it is not what we do, but what God does. And that gives it some incredible, deep, and mysterious aspects that are a little bit hard to wrap our brains around. Okay, a lot hard to wrap our brains around, at least my brain around, but are just beautiful to think about. And so I'd like to share with you this morning a few verses from Hebrews to get us going. This is Hebrews 12, starting at verse 18. You have not come to a mountain that can be touched or that is burning with fire, to darkness, gloom, and storm, to a trumpet blast, or to such a voice speaking words that those who heard it begged that no further word be spoken to them, because they could not bear what was commanded. If even an animal touches the mountain, it must be stoned to death. The sight was so terrifying that Moses said, I am trembling with fear. But you have come to Mount Zion, the city of the living God, the heavenly Jerusalem. You have come to thousands upon thousands of angels in joyful assembly, to the church of the firstborn whose names are written in heaven. You have come to God, the judge of all, to the spirits of the righteous made perfect, to Jesus, the mediator of a new covenant, and to the sprinkled blood that speaks a better word than the blood of Abel. See to it that you do not refuse him who speaks. If they did not escape when they refused him who warned them on earth, how much less will we if we turn away from him who warns us from heaven? At that time his voice shook the earth, but now he has promised, once more I will shake not only the earth, but also the heavens. The words once more indicate the removing of what can be shaken, that is, created things, so that what cannot be shaken may remain. Therefore, since we are receiving a kingdom that cannot be shaken, let us be thankful and so worship God acceptably with reverence and awe. The word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. The writer of this letter to the Hebrews warns that worship is an event to be approached with reverence, awe, and above all, joy. What a great combination of words to describe our worship, which I believe is all of these things, sometimes all at once. We are not a sober congregation of dour Eeyore worshipers. We enter into worship with wonder that we are invited to approach a living God, and even more, that our God approaches us first. How could this not fill us with joy? Our worship, the ancient liturgy or pattern of worship, is something special and difficult to define. So forgive me today if I wander into the mystical aspects of worship. I believe that these aspects are absolutely a reality. They're not easily confronted. They are not safe. They invite us to risk a real encounter with Jesus Christ, the living God. That's not something that fits easily on a Hallmark card or on a video, but let's at least grasp at the deeper meaning of worship together for a few minutes this morning. I had a fun conversation this week about how our activities here don't lend themselves to a marketing campaign. Come to Mount Cross, where we will help you die to self and live for others, is not a selling point that anyone would put in a Super Bowl commercial. Worship is a unique activity. And since every Sunday it retells the gospel story, it too is a foolishness to those who don't believe and pure life to those who do. So here are some beautifully foolish and life-offering elements of our pattern of worship. Our hour or a little more of worship is in time and out of time, part of eternity. And so it transforms time for us. It's not just something that we do. It's something that God does through word and sacrament. Through the pattern of worship, we participate in God's liberation and restoration of all things. Sunday is the day that you can count on water and strong wine to sustain you through the threat of meaningless that you may confront in this life. Through the liturgy, through word and sacrament, faithful are nourished, and seekers are awakened to their deep longing and desire for living waters that never run dry. Sunday is not an ordinary day. Yes, it's a day in the week, but for us, it is also not contained inside the week. It's liberated from time, a window into eternity opened up for us and happening in our time. Every Sunday is a resurrection day. So how do we communicate that? Well, we use song and we use ritual and we use proclamation. We proclaim the gospel in and through our bodies together as a whole community here at Mount Cross. And so it's important to ask, what are we communicating through our worship? Much of Luther's Reform work centered in worship. And as we approach Reformation Sunday this week, I am appreciating his work again. For Luther, all of worship was embodied meaning, or in more modern terms, and a term that I really like, implied theology. All worship, no matter the form, consists in rituals and symbols. And Luther declared that these things can translate and embody the gospel, or they can not. Rituals in our lives are diverse, and not all are connected to faith and a pattern of worship, of course. Rituals can be personal or familial or at the level of a society or a nation. Rituals are a way society organizes life and meaning and tries to create a pattern. But sometimes these rituals can go astray and reinforce meaning in a way that's destructive. We can see this in patterns of systemic oppression of different peoples or groups across the globe. So rituals in and of themselves are a two-edged sword. They can be life-giving, but they can also be restricting, confining, and oppressive. Rituals shape our lives, whether we know it or not, and they shape culture, and they shape society. Corporate worship as ritual is, of course, also prone to that risk, but it has a different starting point. Worship is rooted in the incarnational life of God. Jesus Christ, Emmanuel, God with us. In human Jesus, we encounter fullness of the divinity. God in Jesus shows us our vocation. And worship translates the gospel in our life and world. The ritual and symbolic action in worship give rise to thought and then to meaning. And in these embodiments, something of God becomes visible. Our worship rituals use basic things that are part of this life. Being washed, eating and drinking, telling stories, singing praise and lament. Our attempts at meanings encounter mystery, not just any, but the mystery of resurrection, the mystery of goodness that is stronger than evil, the mystery of life that's stronger than death, and faith that creates a whole new world for us. And this right here, this is the whole challenge of the pattern of worship. It translates mystery that's both public and unknown and indescribable. And it points to deep down goodness that's stronger than evil, and it makes space for that goodness to break through in the midst of all of us. At the same time, it unmasks evil, it names evil, and it takes our protest of all that is evil and absurd and dehumanizing, and it names the no. Worship turns that no into a witness and becomes a yes to life that is shown to us in the gospel. I warned you, I was dipping into the mysticism of worship. Because all of that is an unfamiliar language. It's odd. Unlike all of the other ritual in our lives, the language of worship doesn't begin with us at the center. It's not at all about us, me, you, we. The grammar of liturgy begins with God. God, come to our rescue. God, hear our prayer. God, hear us in our praise and our lament, and in both, God helps us to be awake to the sufferings of the world. The rituals express meaning without words, and they're an important reminder of deep human reality that we're not just minds, but bodies. So, as always reforming Lutheran Christians, it's important that following Luther's example, we ask questions about our worship rituals. How are they creating meaning? How are they translating the gospel? Lutherans have a lot of freedom in worship, but without a strong why, we can forget our center and sometimes bring I or you or we to center instead of God. So we celebrate our tradition of Reformation, that we also have the freedom and responsibility to be self-critical. We ask, do we do things that tell any story that's not the gospel story? Because this story that we tell and retell in worship is not just any story. It is not society's story with all the biases that come into it. It's not a story of just one generation or one ethnic group, even though we celebrate all of the generations and cultures that participate. Our worship is the story of Jesus Christ. Our worship centers the event of the incarnation. And in worship, we experience the ongoing life of Christ in that story. It's mysterious with unaccountable depths, yet available to us to hold in our hands and in our lives for a set-aside time together each week. How mysterious and how wonderful. So this Reformation Sunday, I will wear my red and celebrate this ancient but unique pattern of worship that is our Lutheran tradition. And I hope that you will too. I'll see you Sunday.